And
Okay.
I don't and if you think it's okay to speak, I will speak for a minute. Or
Sure.
Abhinav can speak if he's joining. Abhinav did a lot of work for it. Let him do it. But if is he joining us?
Yeah. He is one of the panelists. He said he'll join. I don't see
Then let
this
him.
live thing, and I didn't get the notification also.
But we are live. But did you see the
We
live
are
now?
going live. Just a minute.
Okay. Fine.
But Saurabh, it already says live top left.
1 minute.
But
Huh.
then let Abhinav only mention this in passing as he's speaking. Let him mention it.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
If I come in, you'll have to introduce me and all. It'll become too much. Let him is already there on stage. Let him just mention it in passing.
Vinay.
Okay. Done.
Hey everyone, good evening.
Hi,
Good evening, Nikhil. Welcome. Sharon, did Abhinav join?
Not yet. 1 minute. Some 23 guests are, I think they're joining now. Abhinav, not yet. No, not yet.
I'll just call.
Hello, Mr. Vijay Kumar, sir. Welcome. Welcome to our event.
Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine.
Welcome, Vijay Kumar, sir. Abhinav, Nikhil, welcome to our panel discussion. We'll just wait for a couple more minutes till Miss Akhila joins us, and then we'll get started.
Sure.
Welcome, Akhila ma'am. Welcome to our panel discussion.
Thank you, Saranya. Thank you very much.
All right, so we are live now on Facebook and all of us are here. So I think we can get started now.
Surely.
Yes. Okay, so welcome to our concluding event for today. Let me just begin with a little quote that is in line with what we're doing in a sense today. True guidance is like a small torch in a dark forest. It doesn't show everything at once, but gives enough light for the next step to be safe. Swami Vivekananda. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our event today, celebrating National Youth Day that commemorates the great Swami Vivekananda on his birth anniversary. The philosophy of Swamiji and the ideals for which he lived and worked are a great source of inspiration for the youth. Having founded our organization on the teachings of Swami Vivekananda at the outset, we at Youth for Good Governance are humbled and ecstatic on the completion of our 4-month-long journey in building this organization. While this shall be a continuous process, we aspire to always keep afloat the concepts and morals of Swami Vivekananda in believing in this country's youth to be the vehicles of transformation in our society. On this occasion of National Youth Day, we organized a one-day event encompassing an online session covering aspects of yoga for mental health, which was conducted by Mr. Samir Ghuge. That was followed by our very first on-field activity at Gopasandra Panchayat, Bengaluru, where we had a tree plantation drive and an interaction session with the students and Panchayat members. And all of this was carried out keeping in tune with the safety and social distancing protocols. Today's event comes to a close with this panel discussion. Before we start, let us join in spirit to invoke the blessings of the supreme all-knowing power to give us the strength in choosing and going the right way. Please join us now to light the lamp. I request Saurav Mukherjee to kindly take this forward.
Thank you, Sharanya. Just a moment.
Yes, sure.
कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
Thank you, Saurav. But on a lighter note, just to cover up the technical glitch that just happened, I think today being National Youth Day, all the youth are praying to God up there. So we were in the waiting list, and hence the gap and the technical glitch. Please, I apologize for that, and thank you for bearing with us. Thank you, Saurabh. So as school students, we were always taught that the pen is mightier than the sword. And as young adults, we came to realize how true those words were indeed. In keeping with that thought, we at YfGG have successfully compiled the first edition of our quarterly newsletter titled Youth in Charge. This mirrors all that YfGG stands for and the events that were organized in the past year. The name Youth in Charge signifies that not just youth, but each and every citizen needs to take charge to make sustainable and meaningful contributions to society. We would now officially release YfGG's 2021 calendar and the first edition of Youth in Charge newsletter on this auspicious day celebrating Swami Vivekananda's birth anniversary. It's our privilege to have such eminent panelists amidst us today that makes this release much more special for us. I request Saurav Mukherjee, one of the co-founders of Youth for Good Governance, to kindly proceed with the release. As you can see, these are glimpses of all the events that we had conducted in the past 4 months since our inception. And this is our first official newsletter.
Thank you, Sharanya, and I thank all the guests to be present here in this occasion. So in this 4th month, we were able to collate all the activities which took place, and this is our first newsletter, and we shall be sharing the e-copy of the newsletter to all our well-wishers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The year that went by was certainly a very challenging one, and the hurdles don't seem to have subsided even now. And we don't really think they're going to subside anytime soon either. Despite all the problems, it has taught us a host of beneficial things like resilience, compassion, love for fellow beings, and the power of nature. Though the pandemic has locked us all in the confines of our homes, it has brought people and nations much more closer than ever before. Despite the risks and uncertainties, there have been many people who have and are continuing to contribute in the COVID relief programs. Just like our frontline workers, these COVID warriors have also exhibited great power in helping those in need during these difficult times. We have with us today 4 such stalwarts who have displayed strength in these times of struggle. They have contributed as COVID volunteers in different programs to help provide medical and other resources to those in need. Please join me in welcoming our panelists for today. Mr. Vijay Kumar Setappa, Co-convenor, Karnataka Janaarogya Chaluvali. Ms. Akhila Vasan, founder, Karnataka Janaarogya Chaluvali. Mr. Nikhil Pai and Mr. Abhinav Verma. Hearty welcome to you all. We are very happy and thrilled to have you all on board for today's panel discussion, which is centered around the theme of Youth in Action, the COVID Warriors. Thank you once again for taking out your precious time on a Tuesday evening and spending it with us today at YfGG.
Thank you. Thank you, Saranya.
First, I would request each of you to introduce yourselves, and then we will go around the table talking to each of our superhero panelists about the various aspects related to their role in rendering community service during this pandemic. So for the questions that are lined up, each of you would get to talk for about 2 to 3 minutes, giving your views on it. Meanwhile, the audience can always post their questions in the chat box here in Zoom or in Facebook Live, and we would take them up and stitch them along with this discussion. At the end, we'll open up the floor for discussion and interaction between the panelists and the audience. So can we have a thumbs up? Are we good to go? All right. If it's not too much of an ask, I would request the panelists to switch on their videos if it's comfortable for them. All right, thank you.
Saranya, I may have bandwidth issues, so I may not be able to switch
No
on my video,
problem.
if you don't
No
mind.
problem, ma'am. Completely understand. No problem. So I think we'll go with the thumb rule, ladies first. So Akhila ma'am, if you could start by introducing yourself.
Thank you, Saranya. I think it's a great pleasure to be here today with a youth forum, and that is bringing so many citizens together, particularly in these difficult times. And I really congratulate you on, your several activities. It was really heartening to see your newsletter and the kinds of various activities that you've undertaken. My name is Akhila Vasan, and I'm a part of Karnataka Janaarogya Chaluvali, which is an autonomous people's health movement in the state, which believes that health is truly a fundamental human right and is a true marker of our citizenship. So, in that sense, we believe that taking care of our health needs is primarily the duty of the government of the day. And therefore, we believe that it's only a completely nationalized public health system that can deliver us justice and equity in healthcare, particularly keeping in mind the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And I have trained in social work and went on to do my PhD from National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences here in Bangalore. And I have been a public health researcher for some part of my life. And for the past nearly 12 years now, I've been part of the health movement in the state. Thank you, Saranya.
Wonderful. That's wonderful to know you're from. I mean, you've done your research from NIMHANS. That is a great thing, and I'm sure you're rich in experience. And like you said, mental health is wealth. I mean, that's the only wealth we will have till we go to the grave. I mean, not just mental health, health in general. Thank you, Akhila. I would now pass the ball to Vijay Kumar. If you could just introduce yourself.
Congratulations on hosting this very important, uh, you know, youth meeting. I would still call youth meeting, and yeah, I just remember we should remember the great contribution of Swami Vivekananda, especially on empowering the young people and inspiring lots of young people across the country and across the world. And today we also see that many of his teachings are as inspirational and as also subverted for their own self-interest. So taking cognizance of the fact that many young people are misled today, and we have to reclaim those youth force and bring them back to the fold of our to build a nation. So Swami Vivekananda's emphasis was not about country. His emphasis was about nation building, character building, which we seldomly see. We see that we are selling our nation, the assets of our nation today, which also includes health and health care. That's where we have to locate. So Swami Vivekananda also emphasized that he told in one of his famous sayings, if a person goes to sleep without food, I mean his soul is still wandering. So I'm sure his soul is still wandering, and we are still looking for the kind of solutions which he proposed, we're not able to deliver. This is, and we are gone bad. We're gone worst in last few years. This is where we are. My name is Vijay Kumar Setappa. I'm an artist. I make films. I'm a filmmaker, and I work between socially engaged art and filmmaking. And part of my work is also to look at health and healthcare. And I work in as a volunteer in Karnataka Janaarogya Chaluvali with Dr. Akhila Vasan. We believe that health is a marker of citizenship, and it's not charity. It's not someone's benevolence factor. It is your right, and we should fight for our rights. Yeah, thank you.
Very well said. Very well said. I completely second with that. Thank you, Vijay Kumar. Moving on, I now would like Nikhil to come over and introduce himself.
Thanks, Saranya. And thanks, Saurabh, for this amazing opportunity of being part of your program, because I've watched a lot of things that Youth for Good Governance is doing since the past few months, and it's quite inspirational to the efforts they are putting in to try and invoke this sense of duty towards not just the nation or people around us, but every single thing that we do. And hats off to you for putting this entire day and everything else together. And a little about me. So I'm a communications and media graduate, postgraduate, and I currently work in a tech company in Cisco with the communications team. That's the full-time aspect, but part-time I love volunteering, and it's been a part of me, like how you have eating, sleeping, and also I just lap up opportunities that come my way where I see I can contribute in any way. So when people ask me what's your hobby, I just happen to mention volunteering. Yeah, so that's in brief.
Yeah, I stand testimony to what he said, and I'm sure Saurabh will too. We go a long way back to our college times in Christ and CSA. And like he said, volunteering is pretty much part of us. We are also part of volunteering. So it works both ways. So glad to have you with us, Nikhil.
Thank you so
It's been a
much.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Last but certainly not the least, one of our star core team members, Abhinav Verma. He's part of us at YfGG, and he was the one that initiated and coordinated our on-field, very first on-field activity today. So Abhinav, you can now introduce yourself, and also please, if you can talk about how the event went on today, it would be great. Over to you.
Thank you, Saranya. Thank you, Saurabh, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to introduce myself with so many great panelists here. Basically, I'm an engineer. I'm working in SAP labs. Apart from that, I'm also a part of Resident Welfare Association in Sarjapur Anikal Taluka, where we do the plantation drive, lake renovation with and all this other activity. Apart from that, we also do support resident who need some help in their bad times. In case of COVID, we helps many residents. So this is a brief introduction about myself. I don't have much to talk about, but that's it from my side.
Thank you, Abhinav. You could just spend 30 seconds more and tell us how did you all go about today's activities, and what did you
Okay.
all...
Oh, sorry, I missed it. So this is the first on ground event that we had in Gopasandra village, where panchayat members, all the local panchayat members, and residents from the Gopasandra village, even the people from the apartments, different apartments. There are 4 to 5 apartments are here. So people have gathered, and we planted around 15 to 20 saplings today. So that was a wonderful experience, and we interacted with many villagers today. So that was the main thing, and we understand what their problems are in this area. Sewage water treatment is one of the problems that we are facing. Lake renovation, lake is getting dried up. So these are the problems that we identify, and how we can come over it and make a better Gopasandra this area. That is what we are looking forward for the local panchayat, and we will work together. Thank you.
Certainly, no doubt about that. We will. And like you said, I mean, unless we get our hands dirty, we wouldn't really know what the real problems are. Technology cannot replace that one aspect, of human interaction and getting to the ground and really going to the grassroots and finding out what the problems are and how best we can help improve the situation. So
Very true.
yes, so that has got us all warmed up, and now let's get the ball rolling with our discussions. So I will start with Vijay Kumar. So I'll just put the question out there, and Vijay, you can start with that, and all of you can just pitch in as and when one speaker gets over. So you can take about a minute to speak, and then you can just pitch in, and we'll get the flow going. So Vijay, if you could comment on this, that when, like, during Corona and this pandemic, when common people chose to lock themselves inside their homes and stay safe and not really bother risking themselves for obvious reasons, what motivated you to involve yourself in serving the people at the cost of risking your life and the life of your family members and those around you?
Sharanya, I think nobody was forced to lock down. Nobody voluntarily locked down themselves. I think we should have that correction. We were forced to remain in our houses. Lockdown was forced upon us, not that we locked down ourselves. It was an overnight decision to just lock down. The logic of lockdown was never understood by the state, nor it only brought misery to the already suffering people. It brought a lot of unnecessary burden to the poor. Their their uh, their food was snatched away. Their jobs were snatched. So we have to recognize that. And going far from it, the rationale of logic never worked in our country. The rationale of logic was the rationale of lockdown was that we prepare our medical systems, we prepare our public health systems to face the pandemic, which never was put in place. It was just it was given a lot of unscientific reasons were floated, lots of false, unscientific, false, and messages were given to the people. It only created more than the pandemic. It only created chaos, and a lot of people died. A lot of people suffered because of the lockdown. So this is where we all pitched in. Where when the state fails, we have to recognize this. When the state failed to protect the people, and this is where people, volunteers, irrespective of caste, class, they ventured out. They came out. They started collecting money and started feeding the poor, started feeding the people, especially the construction workers, people who are daily wage workers, who have no savings, mothers, pregnant women, older people, children. I think they were the most vulnerable of all, where the food was needed. So so we have to recognize the fact that it's a failure of the state, wherein people started responding to the situation, responding to the needs of many of the vulnerable. So yes, then there was no danger. The danger only happened later on when the infection hit us. So we have to recognize this. So yeah, for me it was very crucial, and it's a responsibility of any citizen of this country to protect our people, to protect the suffering, to protect the people who are marginalized. And so, as a citizen, I did what was the best which we could. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I agree that as citizens, we do have our basic duties that we're supposed to give out to the society, no matter at what point in time. But yeah, I mean, there are things that can be left to question and left to debate. That we certainly did buy time with the lockdown, and definitely we were not so equipped because we couldn't handle the virus. It was an unknown territory, so we had to buy that time. But like you said, as a responsible citizen, we can always go out and help when the time is right. Moving on, uh, Dr. Akhila, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, I think at least some of us, um, we have been part of a long process of being engaged in, progressive movements. So what happened during lockdown was really kind of gut-wrenching in so many ways, because you saw these, lines of migrant workers walking home, um, kind of people dying on the way. And I think one of the most traumatic images for me personally during lockdown was the image of this mother who's died on the platform and with a child, by her side, who is crying. I think this, I mean, no matter what, no matter how, I think this was a kind of, what do you call it, telling image uh, of what the lockdown did to the last person in the society. And so I don't think um, I really did much in that sense um, to mitigate the kind of um, uh, the kind of horror we saw unfold before our eyes. So for me, it was a particularly difficult and a very traumatic time, actually.
All right. So, but then what pushed you to get out of that, difficult zone, difficult mental space, and then, do your part, even though things
I
were
think,
risky outside? And
yeah, no, I don't think that was such a big deal, really, because
okay.
it was something that we have been doing. So, this is a full-time engagement in many ways. So, in that sense, it wasn't something very different. I would say it was not.
Yeah. That's how superheroes talk, They say that something that's extraordinary to us, that's just second nature to them, because they find doing such, selfless things even during risky times to be just second nature. It's as normal as every day is. So that's commendable. And like you said, helplessness, feeling that helplessness is just absolute despair when you know you want to do something, but you can see for yourself that your hands are tied. That's one of the worst feelings that anybody could go through, and I wish for all that no one has to go through that. Moving on, Nikhil, if you could throw some light on this.
Yeah. So coming back to your question, I have a case of wheezing asthma. So obviously, I would be in one of those risky categories of people who should ideally have no interaction with anyone outside and all of that. So initially, during the lockdown, the first phase, the first few days, I was being cautious, obviously, especially because I had a baby niece at home. My parents are over 60. So you got to take precautions. And I was doing, but yet the idea to try and help didn't stop. Like as Akhila and Vijay said, there were a lot of things happening all around us on news, right outside on the streets, people who you know, people who you have worked with before in certain projects, people from the slums, people from the villages, all across. And you establish a connect with them. And during their times of need, they do reach out to you because they know they can fall back on you and they know you try to do something for them. So initially, I was just managing things, like trying my best to do things over phone using WhatsApp, connecting friends, trying to gather resources through the networks, through college, through office, all that was possible. But I still felt that void, that probably there's more we can do. And that's when the Corona Warrior program by the state government, led by Captain Manivanan, was started. And I just opened the form, and I filled in the application. And after I filled it in, I told my parents, like, okay, I've registered for some volunteering. And they were like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? That's the typical reaction of parents. Like, why do you want to do all of this, especially during these times? So initially, I sold the idea that it's going to be a work from home kind of thing, just working with data and all of that. And then I started going around in the local area with the civil defense personnel to distribute food packets and other such resources, especially where we had clusters of these laborers, these labor sheds, because even the contractors had bailed out. Like, of course, I do agree to a certain extent that there's a lot that the government could do, but there's a lot that even private people need to do. And there were big construction companies where the heads, the supervisors, the contractors were they were just missing in action. Like no phone calls, their phones are switched off. They're not coming to these labor camps. 400, 500, 800 people sleeping in sheds, which are, first of all, even during a pre-pandemic time, it's quite a difficult situation. And now they don't even have their daily wages. So that was how it started off initially. And then I got a little more support from the DIPR office. And then I could also, and my parents were also getting a bit worried because we used to interact with a lot of people on ground. So that's when I got a chance to move in with the DIPR office, which was more like the control room of the Corona Warrior program. And I was with a smaller team that was coordinating and handling different activities across the state. So that way I could convince my family that I'm kind of safe, but yet go ahead and do as much as possible.
Wonderful. That sounds so powerful. And like you said, I mean, the pandemic was like a whirlwind of things. First of all, the virus was new and nobody knew how to deal with that stuff. And like we all know how lax the administration here is, but not discounting the fact that they were MIA and stuff, but that's what I think our youth in charge, the whole focus comes to, because when people like you are out there, then we can stop the blame game and then we can just like do what is supposed to be done at the moment. So just probably do your part and hope that drops make an ocean eventually. Though I'm not discounting for the fact that private or the government institutes should do what they're supposed to, especially during times of pressing needs. Abhinav, if you could now open up on this.
Tanya, I'll take your question in this way. I realized in the month of July, before that, as Nikhil said, I was also in a comfort zone where I was managing everything from outside, arranging the resource, food, grocery, and distributing it from the outside. When the case happened in my apartment, then I realized, okay, now it's the time to pitch in and do something for the society from coming out, not from the outside, making the coming in and do something. And the one thing which I realized from this, you can arrange food, grocery, medicine, everything you can arrange. That is good part. But the trauma and the pressure from these patients get affected. It's very high. And when you have a 1.5-year-old kid who is also affected, then you realize that okay, you need to pitch and you need to do something for the society. That was the that actually triggered me to come out and help those people. So that was the trigger point for me, I will say.
Wow, Abhinav, I think by far this was the most genuine answer that really touched my heart personally, because you like admitted that you were also in your comfort zone for a while, but that didn't stop you. Nothing stopped you, so you went out yourself and dirtied your hands in a good way. That's commendable. Then. So that was interesting. Okay, now this is almost spilling over to what I wanted to ask next. I mean, most of you have almost covered parts of it, but formally we will talk about now. How did you all manage to convince your family and the ones close to you for you to enter into this? Because obviously you couldn't have done it without that, and probably you are still in the stages of convincing them. It wouldn't have been a complete process, it's still ongoing, but how did you manage to do that? Nikhil, I'll start with you.
It was quite tough, to be honest. Like we can always say no, they were very supportive and all that.
Are
But
you still convincing them, or are they convinced?
right now they're fine because
Okay.
I've been taking precautions, and in fact I used to prevent my brother from ordering out food or going to restaurants and all that because of the pandemic. But I started going out myself for volunteering, so the tables turned. But
Yes.
it's of course challenging, especially when mainstream media portrays very different images out there of what's going on. But you know a bit more because you're on ground. So sensationalism is something that sells, and that's what they do. And those who watch news obviously fall for it. And but we do know, like once we are out there on field, when we are going out there, and we keep those precautions in mind that we got to take, there is a risk, there is a high risk, we can never deny that. But we just need to balance that and try and make sure that's, and I think that's where family members do try and understand. And convincing is a tough game, but you got to play that as well when we want to do something like this. So difficult but possible.
Yes, that was the punchline. That's true. I mean, without risk, there is no gain essentially, and you have to play it out. No matter what you're doing, there's always something that is at stake. So that's absolutely true. Vijay, if you could, I mean, you did mention that nobody was forced to go on lockdown. I agree with that concept, though for official reasons it had to be done. But otherwise, even if you did not have to convince much, what would you have to say on this aspect about how do we go about convincing the people that we stay with or that care for us about these things that we want to do, during such
See,
pandemic time?
I believe that it was an evolving process of understanding the nature of COVID-19. So people didn't had any idea of how it spread, what happens, and everything was just confusion, just anyone's guess. So it was very important that we have a scientific understanding, a proper understanding of the virus, one, and understanding of how the virus spreads and what happens when you are infected. So that was very important. So our emphasis was on dispelling a lot of myths, lot of confusions which was there, and to talk about the scientific nature. Look at the science where what the people are saying to understand. So to dispel the myths, for example, is that people are thinking that people spread the virus, people spread the disease. For example, one I meet another one, and but we have to understand that the virus, the nature of the virus is to spread. It's not the human beings which spread the disease. So these are some of the major things which was needed to talk to your families, because ultimately it is where you take your knowledge, you take your source of information is very important. If you take from WhatsApp University and then you talk to your families, I think it will have more confusion. So very important to talk about this to your families, your younger ones, the older ones, especially the older ones who are the comorbidities. If someone like me who was always going out, I should ensure that I don't come in contact with them very often. I should keep away, and I should wear mask. I should clean up myself when I come home. And these are some of the things which in my house I followed. I didn't meet my parents. I mean, I didn't go. I mean, even though I was talking to them since with a distance, I didn't go to the places where they are. They usually are, and I kept myself away from that. And of course, you have to be extremely cautious when you're in public, when you're with people, when you are socializing with the people, when you're working with the people, you have to be very, very cautious. So apart from that, it was not necessary. It was you need to be cautious. You need to be uh, careful, but not fearful. There's no need for fear. That's very important. So what made us was the unnecessary fear, which distanced a lot of people. There was no need for that. So for me, it was very important that I continue my work with all the precautions and all the safety measures which I have to take.
Absolutely. I think information is power, and what better time to know that than now? Because, like you said, you cannot just pass on wrong information. And this is the time when most people cashed in and they were spreading out, false information, and people that were not very aware fell into that trap. So it's really crucial at moments during like this, we do not pass wrong information and we go to the right source to get what we need to know about. And this is where information dissemination is so vital, and that helps us mentally secure, and what you're dealing with. That's very true. Akhila ma'am,
Yeah.
we would love to hear you on
Yes.
this.
Um, uh, I think our primary concern were the elderly at home.
Yes.
And it was something that one was always concerned and worried about, because we know the extent of risk that the elderly and those with comorbidities face. So I think this was always playing on one's mind. But yes, I had to be very, very responsible about, how, about following everything to a T, and ensuring that when I return home, I, sanitize everything, and yes, keep away. I think that's what I also did. I did not visit my mother for more than 3 months. So yes, I think some of these very important precautions were very necessary, though not out of just panic or fear, but grounded in rational scientific information, whatever was available at that point in time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it was nice of you to say it as precautions, but I think Vijay sir and you, what you're terming as precautions, as staying away from family for this many months, it's more like a sacrifice, is what I see. And you're doing this for the greater good. So kudos to you guys for doing that. Abhinav, over to you.
Okay, Shrenya, for me, it was, I mean, I will not say that it was difficult to convince my family, because I'm also a part of association. So any case happen, then we have to come out and we have to do all the necessary things that is required during that quarantine period and the COVID cases. Okay, so that was not difficult for me to come out. The one thing which I realized, you take any precaution. We were also taking precaution from day one when the lockdown happened. We started we started stopping all the vendor at the gate. We used to do sanitization. We used to do everything. We asked the resident to go and pick their grocery from the gate. But but this COVID can happen to anyone at any point of time. The person who was affected, he just went to hospital for his mother treatment, and from the hospital he got affected. The one thing which I realized during this phase, that it can happen to anyone, anywhere, and any point of time. So you cannot say that I'm taking all precautions, so I will not get affected. No, then you are totally wrong. It's completely wrong. It will happen. If only thing during this phase, you should not get panic. You should keep yourself calm and work. At that point you will realize that yes, the things are getting better. So that was my experience, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, viruses don't discriminate that you're rich, so I'm not going to affect. In fact, so there is no discrimination there. Everybody is equally at risk or not.
Yes,
And
yes,
yes, that's true. And like you said, for gated communities, it becomes more like an association, and automatically that chain kind of builds up, and people start volunteering, and that mentality creeps in. So then that just gets passed on. So that's true.
but one thing, if you give me one more minute, I'll share one experience, maybe if maybe
Please, by all
okay.
means, go ahead.
Okay. The one thing you realize during this phase, that the emotional support you should give to the COVID patient, it helps them to get recover faster than providing them medicine and all other grocery items. So one thing, we as an association and we as a in our society, what we did, we have a group of 4 or 5 people. We used to call that person every day, and we don't talk, and we make sure that we will not talk anything apart from will not talk about COVID or any other thing. We will only talk about web series, movie. We will crack some jokes and make him realize that okay, everything is normal outside. You are normal also. We are there for you. Because if you see in any apartment or in any gated community, you few residents take in a positive way, other gets panic, and they start talking about okay, why they were roaming around after coming from hospital for next 2-3 days, why they were roaming around, why they are not at home. So these negative things which comes, right, it's actually affect the COVID patient to get recover faster. So at that time you have to make them emotionally strong. So this is what
True. That's true. And I think there was during this time, you're absolutely right, because COVID, that being a new and a very innovative virus in itself, everybody's scared whether they will recover, and if they recover, will they be as normal as before? But I would like to say that here there was nothing like right and wrong, because in essence, in reality, everybody was a patient, everybody in this world, because somebody was suffering from a job loss, somebody's company shut down, somebody's dear one got affected with comorbidity. So whatever. So everybody was going through something. And because of that, panic was at its peak. So this corona brought with it a lot of other companions that added on to the panic, and everyone was going through, and probably still is, especially the daily wage workers and those employees who lost their jobs. So it's been tough, and giving that mental support is extremely vital, and recognizing that mental health is as important is something that we should have done it long back, but better late than never. Moving on, this is a bit of a technical question, I would say, as compared to what we have been speaking so far. This is something that we want to know. How was the government's response towards providing these required medical resources during the period? So was it adequate? Was it timely? Was it delayed? You can be as frank as you want. And yeah, who would like to go ahead? It's a very
I will
heated.
pitch in here, Sharon.
Sure, Vijay. Go ahead.
Well, it can be answered in many layers, but our governments were not scientific. And let's go, you know, they were all, people were told that you have to take your plates and beat, and the corona will go, and all that, tali maro and all that. This is where government was propagating in a very big way. In fact, so that way they didn't had any idea about the pandemic. They were also not making any efforts in imparting the proper knowledge to the people. And see, we have to understand the public health system in India is a very defunct public. It's a system. It has no capacity. You can't build capacities overnight. And by its nature itself, it was not functional. And in that context, what do you expect? How things will function with whatever resources at hand? They could have still done a lot of work, which absolutely they failed. They failed to deliver. They failed to do the mandate which they were. We have elected them for taking care of the people. They collect taxes from us. In fact, most of our taxes are indirect taxes. 60% of our tax is everyone pays tax. Even if you buy a salt, you pay tax. So this is where we are, that the state didn't get into the scientific mode and do a proper work. So this cannot be also true across India. For example, if you look at Kerala, which is well placed with public health system, they did excellent job in terms of addressing people, addressing the nutritional needs, addressing the medical relief. And what was very important is the governance. The thing is, you all are working on governance. Here is a very decentralized governance system where a panchayat level decisions are taken, where people were involved, the communities were involved in taking decisions. It was not a top-bottom approach, it was bottom-top approach, which the Kerala model propagated. And we can see, at the end of the day, we can see a good results, better proper response to the medical efforts in Kerala. This you won't see in a neighboring state like Karnataka for that matter. So when we say, as a nation, it was very, very, we can see spectrum of responses in our country.
I would agree with that part, that we had a spectrum of responses, and more so because, like we've been saying this time and again, that this virus is relatively new. And like I said, this is a very controversial topic, because any of us could have opinions and nobody is really right and wrong here. But I would just like to add that I think this has been a time where we cannot essentially say that we could have done better or we could have done,
Yeah.
of course we could have done a lot better. I agree, and having bought time with the lockdown was probably one of the strategies, and I think personally, I think that was fair enough. But like you said, for the daily wage workers whose bread was snatched away from their mouth, essentially, like if I don't get paid for today, what am I going to do? For them, it was hell. And I don't contest with that. I don't debate against it. That is completely hands down the right thing. But like things like what Bharat Biotech has done, it's the first time, India has come up. I mean, coming up with a vaccine is not a joke, and it takes about 8 to 10 years to come up with. All over the world, people are trying. So I think that's one good thing that has happened. And like you said rightly, in Kerala, Shailaja teacher and all the contributions that they did. So I mean, difficulties are the time when people put their best foot forward sometimes. So it just under pressure, sometimes it makes you better. So we have such good cases, and India came on the map thanks to Bharat Biotech and other such things. So this is quite a debatable thing. So we're just voicing opinions
Yeah,
here.
I would
And
like to come in here, Sharanya.
yes, please, Nikhil, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so though your question is quite specific when you speak about medical resources.
Yes.
I'm no doctor, I'm no MBBS doctor, not even a PhD holder. Neither am I a health expert, so I cannot give you the apt answer to it. But I would say that retrospectively, we can point a lot of fingers at multiple things that went in directions that they could not have. I just had a simple thing, a simple thought initially that rather than having people quarantine, people locked down, as soon as you know that there's a virus spreading, you could have just quarantined people who are flying in, which are just a few, very handful number of people. That could have been the simplest solution, but no country did it, right? So retrospectively, you have a lot of innovative ideas, a lot of things, but that's not how things work in reality, especially when you're dealing with 130 crore plus people. So that's for another day, I guess, the debate on whether things were right, decisions taken, government, political, that's a different thing. And, but one thing I realized during this whole experience, when you speak about the government, whenever I've been part of multiple programs and projects, whether it's through CSR, through CSA, or through different organizations, we do find fault with the political system, with the government itself and governance itself, because you are on the other side of it. But this one opportunity I got, I was part of the system. So any fingers that are pointed at are indirectly pointed at me as well, because when I signed up for this program, I am part of the system. So usually we criticize the organization, the government, right, or the bureaucracy, but we do need to also accept that every basket has some rotten apples, and that is the same case. So I was directly dealing with the COVID warriors from 7 districts in our state, and I also had a direct connection with the food in charge, like all those inspector. I mean, not the inspector, but the district in charge of this DIPR officer. We had direct connects with the Red Cross Society heads for the district. So we were in touch with them, and a few of them were so proactive. They were available 24/7. They used to mobilize things as soon as it was required. Like we used to get distress calls from people even across the border. So we have had cases where citizens of Karnataka are calling the Karnataka helpline, but only for us to figure out that they're on the other side. They're stuck in Maharashtra without food. It's been 12 days. It's been 13 days, and the local support has is completely exhausted. But we have had officers here who have supported through official as well as unofficial means, like calling up people from their batch, requesting them to do something. So a lot of people have gone out of their way to try and support. And as I keep saying, there's always more that could have been done. A lot of things could have been done. As Vijay rightly pointed out, like our medical system with the whole production, like even for example, Mahindra rolled out their ventilators within a few days. They had like one whole team doing R&D on it. A lot of companies put in all efforts. Government organizations, DRDO, a lot of them got into this whole research mode. So could we have used lockdown better? 100%. Definitely. There's no two ways about it. But did we give it all we got? To a certain extent, yes. A lot of them. So medical resources, yes, because you had all tempo travelers converted to ambulances, just giving you an example. So that's something that's not something we would have thought of, right? So private vehicles attached. Of course, scams come along with every single thing that happens. because of the history of our governance. Over these years, the history has established such a system, and it's not going to go away just because of a pandemic, right? There is rot at the core, and it's just not going to go with the snap of a finger. So I think that a lot of good has happened, and we should also call that out when we say that a lot of things didn't go right.
Certainly, that's true with almost any case, and I agree with Vijay. We are inadequate. I mean, if we have to compare, and there was so much shortage of hospital beds, so that goes without saying, absolutely. So I think Akhila ma'am, you're from a better position to answer this. You're from the healthcare background, mental health. So if you could just share your views on this.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think, see, one of the things that we expected as those being in public health was that you would, find the government acting on reliable scientific data. Because, like you pointed out at the beginning of your talk, that this brought people's, countries, nations together. And so, there was a free flow of information. It wasn't as if no one had to really struggle for that. And small things could have been done. And you really wonder what went wrong, because it's not about picking fault. It's about learning from our mistakes. Because this is not going to be the first or the last pandemic you're going to see in this, in the future. And if our societies need to be prepared, then we need to really learn our lessons from the experiences that we've done, from the mistakes that we have made, and learn from what others have done well. So I think it's very, very important that we reflect on this, because yes, I mean, things have, so many people pitched in. In fact, I think it was a civil society that came across where the humanity came shining through.
Yeah.
So, but at some point, the civil society cannot bear the burden of the entire pandemic. That's unscientific. It is up to the state. It is up to the governments of the day to take the right decision based on scientific information. But what did we find from the government happening? One was, I think there was a lot of information that was patently, unscientific. For instance, the Niti Aayog conducted a press conference in the first week of May and said that their own mathematical modeling it has predicted that the pandemic is going to end on May 17th. And based on that, May 23rd was fixed as the date of lifting the lockdown. Okay, so at some point, and this was refuted by all epidemiologists in the country, by all experts who are trained in this field. They said, this is not true. This is wrong. This is not how this is going to behave. Let's be more cautious. So we brought in a strategy. We needed a lockdown, surely and definitely. But we needed it at a slightly different time and in a different manner. So there were so many suggestions that were coming up from experts. So as a public health person, as somebody, who was reading up and who had access to discussions with others across the spectrum, it was very distressing that we are not going along, what is being recommended by people who are trained in the field. This is not too much to ask. So you really wonder, where are we headed? The second thing that was extremely problematic was, politicization of the pandemic. Because I think this contributed to a lot of fear and a lot of panic.
Yeah.
Because a pandemic is a time when you want the community, when you want the society to come together in solidarity, to stand for each other and against a common enemy, so to say. But here we were politicking. Here we were trying to, scapegoat a certain community. And where did that lead us? And as a responsible government, the state had every power to come down heavily on these media outlets that were blatantly targeting certain communities, when in fact there was really no, when it was also contested seriously. So, I mean, you had the power of the Indian Epidemic Act on your side. So why weren't you using it? Why? I mean, this actually has triggered more distress. We know that because we were on the ground in those particular wards in question that create. I mean, we saw how people suffered. So one cannot really take a very detached stand and say that it's fine. Let's give the government its due. No, I think these were small things, and these were all within the power of the government to do. So it's not nitpicking. It's not picking fault. It's about saying that these are things that nobody does in the time of a pandemic. And these are the markers of a responsible government. This is a marker of a responsible governance model. So, and when you have good governance along with scientific evidence, that's when you get your act right. So when you get either of these things wrong, we are done. And I think that was amplified during the pandemic. The stigma, of kind of scapegoating, of picking on certain people, certain this thing. And what it really did was it divided society on the ground. See, we might have not seen that because, we have been kind of generous. We've been out there. We've been kind of almost blinded to these differences. But that was not the case in many communities that we came across. So people shut doors on each other. People, ostracized families and communities, and people, lost. I mean, this contributed so much to the mental trauma. I mean, it was something. It took us a lot. In fact, when we started our work on the ground in some of these communities, we had to get past so much more fear, so much more, suspicion as to who are these people? Why are they here? What are they doing?
Right.
So these were the multiple, it added to our challenges on the ground, which could have been completely made easy for those of us who were on the ground.
True. I think the highlight of what you said, ma'am, was that, learning from others as well, because this was time was of the essence during this crisis. And I mean, real time examples are when Kerala was an example state, leading by example, but then, the tables turned when the cases in Kerala just skyrocketed. And as early as probably last week, when China announced that they are officially corona free, they had to enforce the lockdown again. So this is such a tricky situation that time is of essence. So like you rightly said, we need to learn from others, their achievements and shortcomings as well. Abhinav, over to you.
Okay, Shranya, for me, I agree with all the three panelists, Vijay, Nikhil, and Akhila. I will not agree with any one of them because I felt during this time there was two sides of the same thing, of the coin, where one side it also opened the door of the corruption, where I personally saw that, where one person was affected. The DHO forced around 15 to 20 members in my society to go for the COVID test, and for that he charged extra. I mean, for 500 each. That was totally. We know that it is going in his pocket. This is the first sign. The other thing which I noticed, it's my personal experience, which I will say. My Mosi didn't get proper treatment in Ranchi because she was not having the corona, but she was not the hospital where we were trying to get her admitted. They were not allowing because they have reserved the bed for the corona patient, and they were not allowing her to get the proper treatment. We lost her, and she didn't had a corona. But when we approached through the political leaders that the bed which was allocated to corona patient, that was immediately allowed, that was immediately released, and they informed to the other hospital that you can release the patient and we will admit her in the Medanta. That was my personal experience. That was the bad experience which I had. Other good experience which I think it also has a side where there were multiple doctors and nurses. They did 24/7 works. They served the patient throughout the day, throughout the week, 24/7. So that was a positive side. But it has two sides of the pandemic, where one side is bad, other side is good. So this was my personal experience, which I thought of sharing it.
Yes, I think you summed it up really well. The good and the bad, everything has two sides to it. And like Nikhil said, on retrospect, we can definitely say we could have done 1,000 times better, because when it comes down to health and things so crucial and primary essential, you always think, you could always put the best foot forward.
And Sharnya, one more point which I missed. I agree with Vijay and Akhila at one point where health is our right and it should be nationalized. So private hospital, they are forcing a person to go for the COVID test. Even he is not affected with the COVID, he doesn't show any symptom, but he is forced to go for a COVID test before getting any kind of treatment. So that is something we have to think of. That is that is a bad sign if you think in a private hospital, and they charge huge money for this. So that is one point.
Yes, Abhinav, you're absolutely right, because those were some of the other distress calls we had to attend to. Patients who got stuck in private hospitals where the bills were constantly climbing and they had no way to kind of, this was before the government announced the scheme, where people could get government allotted beds at subsidized rates and so on. So, one had to intervene even at that point in time to talk to the managements of the hospitals to say that this is unacceptable and so on. So a lot of people even suffered in that situation where they got caught in the private hospital, not because they wanted to, but because most of the government facilities had been turned into COVID facilities, and there's no way they would open up for any other ailment or any other kind of issue.
Absolutely, like how all of you said. Especially Vijay, how you emphasized we were short-staffed and our infrastructure was inadequate. I completely agree. And adding on to the misery was when, the stakeholders or players, they tried to monetize the situation, or they showed their power play there, and they thought this was a situation that they could leech out on, and that was something that definitely, like you said, added on to distress. But it's always a learning. Some learnings are really expensive, and some are not that, but at the end of the day, it becomes a learning, and since time is of the essence, that's the only way we can take it as. So I will now open it up to any of our audience. If you would like to, anyone wants to say something, ask or comment. Because on Facebook, I see the reactions are good. There are no questions yet, but the audience seems to be enjoying. Yes, Vinay.
Good evening. My name is Vinay Bhushan. I am one of the co-founders of the Youth for Good Governance Foundation. My colleagues Saranya and Saurav have been very active in putting this together along with the panelists. It's been a very interesting discussion so far on a very important issue. My attention, recently, in the recent past, we have seen public health become the top of the agenda for every country on earth, and rightfully so. Now, can India move to an environment where public health is seen as a fundamental right? Or can we have legislation like right to education, a similar legislation akin to right to education, where this is not seen as some private choice or private privilege, but something that the government, the state is involved in delivering to every individual as a right, right to public health or right to good health, however it is labeled. So I think we should move to that. COVID has taught us that lesson, but do you see India moving to that uh, in the coming years? Does it have the political will, financial will, social will? I'd like the public health experts to delve on this for a few minutes. Thank you.
I think that's a very interesting question. Quite important as well. But since we are running short of time, I would request Vijay and Akhila ma'am to take it up quickly, and Nikhil, you can pitch in if
Yeah.
we smooth. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think Vinay has posed a very, very important question, and thank you for raising it, because I think this has been on the topmost agenda of most public health, public health activists across the globe, perhaps, that to make this a top priority for nations. But when you look at the policy environment right now, it looks extremely difficult that this will become a fundamental right anytime soon, even though our constitution, as per Article 21, has been read by several Supreme Court judgments as including the right to health, because that's intrinsic to right to life, which is Article 21. However, that is going to be inadequate in the coming years. And unfortunately, what we see in the National Health Policy of 2017 is that the government is still reluctant to make it a fundamental right, because as it sees it, it still has not moved to a stage where it can be guaranteed by the state as a right. And if you look at even the data, you will find that India is among the countries that spends the least, barely 1.3% of its GDP on health. Whereas on an average, when you compare the BRICS nations, you will find that it ranges at least from 4% upwards, be it China, Russia, South Africa, or Brazil. And these are countries that are comparable to India in terms of their size, in terms of their disparities. And these are considered to be the fastest growing economies across the globe. But we don't seem to be catching up. And that's a huge sign for worry, especially. And this pandemic has I think, really exposed the fault lines of the public health system. And I think one of the good things that the pandemic has done is that it has really, made citizens very aware of where we are in terms of the health system in the country. And I think as more of us get engaged, get involved, this is also a way of putting the citizens' pressure, demanding that this be converted into a right, that we demand that the state not withdraw, as it has been doing in the past decades, withdraw from the health sector and handing over more and more territory to the private players. So I think it's time for the citizens to come together, to band together, to demand that that we need to make this a fundamental right, and to actually reclaim the space that the government has surrendered to the private, reclaim it back into the state space. So I think that's one good thing that the pandemic has done, really.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Vijay, if you want to add, you can quickly do that, and then we will wrap up this discussion.
Sure. Akhila has covered most of it, but I would like to do it. Look at it more politically in terms of how what are people's groups are doing around this. We don't see any like groups like Youth for Good Governance. What should be their perspective towards health and healthcare? How would they, in their further days, how would they lobby? How would they build their discourse around health, especially health as a right? See, we never looked at we never talk about health. We only talk about health when we are not healthy. So we should start talking about health when we are healthy, and we should really monitor our public health systems. We should visit and use our services. For example, I'm not sure how many of us in this panel we do use government hospitals, do frequent government hospitals, even for say consultation, even for normal consultation, for fever, for anything. We don't see unless until we start using the system, we can't expect the system to get strengthened. You visit, you make, you demand better services because your tax. Ultimately, that's the duty of a citizen. When systems don't work, you have to make it work. Not that you create another system. Not that get benevolent with the system. Oh, they don't have it. That's not the point. Point is to make systems work, not create parallel systems. So how do we do that? As the idea of governance is that we make systems work, then it becomes a right. Then the idea of a right as a right comes into picture. Yeah, thanks.
That was well said. That was really well said. I think Vinay, you've got the answer, and that was a very nice, informative question to have asked. So with that concludes our panel discussion, and we are really happy and grateful to all of you for having taken time out and spent your busy schedule with us today, this evening. And with that, now, since we're coming to the end of this celebration, right from the morning, we've had like so many events back to back, like we just mentioned in the start, and every session was a big event in itself, right from the yoga to the on-field activities. And now with this panel discussion, which was so informative, and all of us were transparent enough in engaging with the discussion and voicing our opinions, and rightly so, because that's how information has to be disseminated and not biased or, this was probably the right way that we all could communicate on such a crucial aspect today. But no effort comes to fruition without teamwork. And this event was also a cumulative effort by the team and various other well-wishers. I now welcome Saurav to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sharanya. So it was really an enriching session, and I would like to thank Nikhil, the youngest of the lot, Abhinav, Vijay, and Akhila. So while I was speaking to Youth for Seva today morning, so I kind of thought of bringing the same connection today. So we were taking reference of similar incidents which happened in India 123 years ago, when West Bengal was hit by plague outrage. And similarly, Swamiji did a selfless service with his young sannyasis to serve people and to kind of deal with a similar kind of situation. And at that point of time, we had a British government, but still Swamiji was of the opinion that let's keep trust on the government, let's just be positive. And he had rolled out a health bulletin in Bengali and in Hindi, where he was talking about similar thing. It was about to keep ourselves healthy, maintain basic hygiene, keep our surrounding clean. And this is the same thing we are talking about today. And I'm also great that today, 2020 and 2021, I can connect the same spirit of selfless volunteering from young, energetic people who never thought that what the adverse effect which will happen to their family members if you are exposed to the infection. They just went like the lion and did their duty. And also I would have no hesitation to say this, that the spirit of volunteering or the spirit of citizen engagement is something I've learned the most from the people of Bangalore while I was there. And these people are also fighting with the same kind of thing, which is in the sphere of health, that is waste management. And we very well know how the situation was in terms of policy measures before the Swachh Bharat mission. So even they, without complaining, kind of did their part and kept on, like they continued their advocacy with the government so that there is better system in place. And today as well, so health being a crucial issue, and for so many years after independence, that it was not given the due attention which was supposed to be. And suddenly in the corona situation, when we were clueless, and even the developed countries with much more standard and advanced healthcare system, they kind of collapsed. So yes, advocacy is required. So universal healthcare is the need of the hour, because poor cannot die in this 21st century without proper treatment. And I'm sure that with citizens' engagement, with the kind of advocacy, the government will soon roll out adequate schemes. So though we have schemes like Ayushman Bharat and Janaarogya centers and various state government policies are coming up, so I think as a responsible citizen, it is also a duty to make this information available to the people so they can take proper advantage of all these facilities. So yes, with the positive note that we continue this effort, and I wish you all a very happy National Youth Day, and we also take Swamiji's blessing on his 158th birth anniversary. With that, thank you so much, Vinay, Akhila, Nikhil, and Abhinav once again. So Sharanya, after with this, maybe we can, after we conclude this session, we may have a little, like a small session with Abhinav and Vinay. They can tell us about the morning session, 5 minutes,
Certainly.
and then we'll end it. Yeah.
Certainly. And Vijay and Akhila ma'am and Nikhil and Abhinav, I mean, this has been like, this is personally what I've got from all of you that you've said is helping has become so much second nature to you. And on, like how Saurav said, on a positive note, this is what youth has to take back. Not just youth, any citizen has to take back, that you've all faced so many hurdles. And on top of that, you've had a lot of personal sacrifices that you've had to do, despite which you got your hands dirty and you're still continuing your efforts in doing something meaningful. So more power to all of you. You're all big inspiration, and we sincerely hope that each of us can do at least part of what you guys are doing on an everyday basis. So thank you again for spending your Tuesday evening with us, and I will just end it with one last note. Bear with me. This is a quote from Swami Vivekananda, needless to say. So it goes like, take up one idea, make that one idea your life, dream of it, think of it, live on that one idea. And we have live examples sitting out here who are living that one idea of volunteerism, of selflessly doing and serving for the society without any second thoughts and making personal sacrifices. Thank you so much, all of you. Wishing you a good and pleasant evening and a wonderful week ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharanya. We look forward to continued engagement with all of you.
Definitely, ma'am. It would be a pleasure.
Thank you, Sharanya. Thank you, co-panelists. It was a great experience learning so much from you.
Thank you.
Thank
A
you.
Thank you so
pleasure.
much. Thank you. Wonderful. Good night. Nice knowing you all.
Good
Have a
night,
nice
sir.
evening.
Thank you.
Night.
Is Vinay here?
Vinay is not here.
Okay. So Abhinav, you may sharing a little bit about what you have done today in the morning session. So indeed, it was a really exciting event for all of us, as this was the first event which we could do on the ground after, like, not I said after the pandemic, it's still on, but yes. So yes, over to you, Abhinav.
Thank you, Saurav. So, the background of this picture, you can see we have planted so many trees. I mean, 15 sampling we have planted, 15 to 20 sampling which we have planted. And Vinay, yeah, can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this was just starting. So, I mean, you are you sharing some photos, Saurabh?
Yes.
Yes.
These
Do you want to share?
No. You only share, please.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So first, it was an amazing experience to go out and do a plantation near my village only, where I am residing. And Vinay and Nisha was also a part of it. We all four went together, my wife, Nisha and Vinay. And there were a couple of more residents from my society, plus nearby society. Plus we have a resident from the village, Gopsandra village. Then we have panchayat members, ex-members also present there. We have a newly elected member. So there were, around 20 to 25 people have gathered there. And it was a great experience to work with the local government bodies like panchayat. These people are these people whom we have to interact for getting all our things done. Like a street light, we cannot approach the MP or MLA. These are not their work. These are the people whom we can approach for these kind of thing. So that was a good. Apart from that, we distributed the mask to the people who participated in this plantation drive. That mask has our logo of YfGG that was distributed. We also had there were few people who came. One guy came from the BESCOM also. So he also was very interested, and he was impressed with what we were doing. So he was also interested in that. So he also suggested that he has a youth wing of 150 Reddy people, who is also a part of Swami Vivekananda group. So he said that he only approached, and he said that in future, if you want to do something, let's have a collaboration, and he can help us with all these things. So that was a wonderful. It's good to interact with the people of different background. So he was not from political party, but he was a prominent leader, prominent resident of this village. I was muted over.
No, you were speaking. We could hear you.
Okay. So Saurabh, if you can share some picture, I can highlight those pictures. That was okay. One thing we missed. I missed to share. We planted jackfruit and neem tree. So once it grows, we will take the jackfruit from that plant and we can have it.
That's nice, lovely.
Vinay, so how was your experience? For me, it was a wonderful experience interacting with the local government body, and everyone was helpful, Vinay. If you see the people from the panchayat came, they helped in all the way, whatever we required, their support and help. They were there to help us. So even the local people, local villages, and the residents were also there. This was. He is one of the residents from my apartment only. We work together as an association. He is a secretary, I'm as a treasurer. So she is my wife. And the one person who is in white shirt, he is the newly elected panchayat officer, panchayat member, sorry. So Vinay, do you want to add something?
Yes, it was a very, very memorable program today morning at the Gopasandra village in Anekal Taluk. This is part of the Bengaluru urban district in Karnataka. And it's heartening to see that even in an urban jungle like Bengaluru, you still have some villages on the outskirts, a lot of greenery, lakes, very productive people, population going about their business even during a pandemic. So it was very heartening scene. And we were glad to be part. YfGG was glad to be a partner with the local Gram Panchayat to celebrate National Youth Day by planting saplings, neem and jackfruit, as Abhinav mentioned. Abhinav Verma, in fact, is the mastermind of this all. He was the cheerleader. He was the front-ranking member of this effort in the morning. He was a gracious host to all of us, to Nisha and myself from Team YfGG. We had a good time. I think it was an eye opener to understand a lot of issues. And we also learned that, there are a lot of local youth organizations in areas like Gopasandra. And there are good opportunities that are yet to be exploited to ensure that youth of villages also come on board to the mainstream, and it is not just an urban effort. Youth activities are not just an urban English language dominated effort. There is scope for rural youth who come from backgrounds that are not English centric. We had a very good experience. The occasion itself, the village, the larger social issues, all very interesting, very gracious people there. And we hope to have more YfGG, we hope to have more such events in Gopasandra to begin with. And we've already made a beginning. I said, one more time we can go there and similarly spread across different parts of India so that we understand the youth of from different backgrounds. Youth reflects the diversity of the country. They're not uniform. They're not homogeneous, just like this country is not homogeneous. So we have to YfGG in its work. I think we will in the coming days and months and years reflect this heterogeneity in our work. Gopasandra was a very, very memorable experience today morning, and plenty of pictures. We posted live videos on social media, so it was all great. I hope all of you can take some time off. I saw Pradyot. Is he joining us from Ladakh? I've not seen him after he left. She moved to Ladakh.
Delhi.
He's in Delhi. Okay, good to know. We can also do such things in Ladakh, other end of the country. But it was an eye opener in many ways, and it was a very good experience. Thank you, Abhinav, primarily. Nisha as well. She's not here, but she was very instrumental in making it a success. Thank you all.
Right. So yes, Abhinav, thank you so much for taking this on ground. And I think this is a beginning of how we want to function as Youth for Good Governance. And the journey started from a very grassroots level democratic institution that is a Gram Panchayat. And Karnataka has already demonstrated a very successful model for the Panchayati Raj system. And we are glad we are able to start our journey from there. And we really hope that we get to collaborate more with the Gram Panchayat of various parts of the country, so we can work hand in hand to resolve various issues together, to bring more innovation in the Gram Panchayats and to connect them with more innovations, right? So thank you so much. And it was a great day. So it started all in the morning with a online yoga session. It was followed by the sapling plantation in the Gram Panchayat. And in the evening, we ended by interacting with the COVID warriors. So indeed, it was a great day, and please stay updated with our page, social media page and websites for our future updates. Thank you so much.